Okay, I think we are live. I just need to add one more stream so that everyone can see us and hear us. Just a second, and we'll be ready to start. Okay. Are we good? I think we are good. Guys, let us know if you can see us and if we are at your screens. If you can hear us, please let us know, because we're starting the last day of S4 Summit 2022, the fourth day, but still so much to learn and so much inspiration to acquire today. Hi guys, great to have you back. It's 10 o'clock, so we can start. As you can see, I'm not alone here. I have Katka Vokrinkova with me. Hello, Katka. Great to have you at S4 Summit again. If there are some people that maybe joined us this year for the first time, just let me tell you that Katka represents our sponsor PwC, and she is a Salesforce UX designer. She's been part of the Salesforce ecosystem for more than 6 years, having gained 7 certifications, originally starting off as an admin and business analyst. Now combining her pre-Salesforce experience in graphic design, web development, and branding, she focuses on UX UI analysis and design. In her free time, she loves walking her golden retriever Loki, learning handstands, and cooking Indian cuisine. Wow, what a cool passion to have. Okay, Mihao is saying hello. Good morning. Good morning to you too, guys. Just let me remind you. Every day I'm telling you about this because this is not only a meeting that you can listen to and acquire some knowledge, but you can also gain from asking your questions. If there is anything that you want to know, if there is anything that you would like Katka to maybe tell you a bit more about, please be sure to leave your questions, leave them in the comments section or send them to our mailbox. We will show all of those questions and read them out loud, of course, to our presenter once she is done with her presentation. So hello, Katka. Once again, great to have you, and good luck. Have fun.
Thank you. Imagine you're a pilot. You have several years of experience and a track record of flawless, successful landings. But today, you're extremely nervous. Your partner is at the hospital, and you just simply cannot think about anything else. As you're approaching the airport, you reach for a landing gear control, as you have done it a million times before. But suddenly, the plane crashes. It collapses on the runway, and in the split of a second, you know that this is just not gonna end well. This is not a nightmare. This is a reality of many Air Force pilots during the Second World War. They kept crashing so often, and when these accidents were investigated, they always came to the same conclusion. It was a human error. It was only many years after that when 2 American psychologists looked into it and said, this is not a human error. This is a designer error. That's how they called it. What they realized was that the 2 controls, one for landing gear, which controls the speed, and one for wing flaps, which does complete opposite, are identical, and are placed right next to each other. Imagine as this was in your car. A gear shift would be of the same size and shape as your handbrake, for example. Are you confident that you would always reach out for the right one, even at night, or when you're under pressure? Or when you have spent the last 30 minutes filling out this most annoying text form, and when you get to the very end of this form, there are 2 similar looking buttons, one for canceling and one for submitting. How many times have you actually clicked on the wrong one, losing all the job and trying to pull your hair out of anger? Me, I've done it so many times. I've done it without thinking. And because I just got confused as the Air Force pilot. The two American psychologists, they looked into the issue and came with a brilliant innovation, knowing that they just cannot simply redesign the whole cockpit to make it look very different or to put the two controls away from each other. They said that they would like just to add simple knobs on top of the controls. One of a rectangle shape for the landing gear, one of a round shape for the wing flaps. With this brilliant insight and a very simple solution, they have saved lives. The number of accidents dropped down to 0 overnight. And since then, it has been enhanced even further, adding many more security controls so that now this is not an issue at all. And this is how the idea of ergonomics was born. Nowadays, among numerous fields, it also has an enormous impact on user experience and product design, highlighting that when there are too many options, marking them clearly as distinct is crucial. It has solved life and death issue for the Air Force pilots in this particular case. And in the Salesforce world, appropriate attention to user experience significantly drives adoption and improves efficiency without the necessity to rebuild the whole control panel. I'm Katka. I'm Salesforce UX designer, and I'm here to tell you today why this role is important for every project. As you have heard, I'm excited about many different things, and my most favorite part of my job is designing custom lightning design components, apart from, of course, collecting trailhead badges. I'm always up for a new challenge and trying new things, and this is exactly why I have chosen this career path, because it's so new, it's so innovative, yet undiscovered still. And that's why I would like also to share with you what encompasses my work and how maybe you could consider either getting some of our kind on your team or maybe just going this route yourself. In 2019, Salesforce and Burning Glass Technologies carried out an extensive survey across the whole US job market, identifying an increasing demand for design skills, mostly in relation to admin, consulting, and dev jobs. As you can see here on this slide, the most common design skill that was required was UX experience. Then also followed by creative and brand, and also design strategy. What this research also uncovered were a couple of very common yet important themes. First, the design has an enormous total addressable job market outside of Salesforce, and it also has a high job growth potential within Salesforce. Even though, of course, we haven't heard about Salesforce designers up until maybe last year, the designer job as such is out there. And the more we invest into appreciating and recognizing the design forward mindset, the outcomes of every project will be better. Also, what they discovered is that designers are foundational makers who work closely with many other roles, such as developers and architects. And while design is a very critical role for diverse teams, sometimes they are marginalized and misunderstood. Because, of course, in the reality of many projects, design is just a nice to have thing. Let's be honest here. Sometimes we just come down to the fact that we don't have time for design, we don't have the budget, or we just don't have the right people to do that. However, the conclusion is that Salesforce ecosystem would definitely benefit from having more designers and people using the design forward mindset to drive projects, to look at user adoption, or for example, users efficiency. And now let's speak about why actually design matters. Because design enables companies to make the right decisions on what to build and how it should work. And of course, design is not something that would save it all. We still need developers, we need architects, we need consultants, we need business analysts to make it all work. However, designers are just this one missing piece of a puzzle that really make it all together complete and very well functioning. What's important to acknowledge is that Salesforce tech stack is growing very rapidly. We hear about more and more companies that Salesforce acquires, or more clouds or products that they release, which is exciting. But at the same time, sometimes for users, it may be very hard to understand it and to work with so many different functionalities. And of course, customers want to get out the most from Salesforce and its investment. And that's why we need to use a human-centered design to implement it. We're going to be speaking about it a little bit later, but this is just for you to get a complete picture of why I personally think design matters. Because there is also a huge potential of impact if design and the design principles are applied correctly and in the right time for the right people. It creates ethical, equitable, and sustainable solutions that are scalable and are naturally increasing NPS and CST. Also, from the projects that I've been already working on and from the experience that we've got, it also increases the probability to reach KPIs and business outcomes, because they naturally improve when people are more motivated to use solutions that are designed for them. And also for both for consultants or consulting companies or customers who have been using such designed solutions, it is a competitive differentiator and advantage, because their end customers or their internal staff, they just, when they are more happy to use solution that has been designed with principles of user centricity, as I said, the outcomes will be definitely better than it have been without the design. Let's look at these designer roles, because of course, as we have different types of consultants, such as marketing consultant or business consultant, or for example, CDP consultant, we also have different roles within the designer ecosystem. While these may not have been necessarily that established as the other roles, we are starting to see certain patterns and certain experience and skills that we are attaching to these three designer groups. One is a digital designer. This is a person that is creating value for the end customer. They produce and improve different flows, business processes, interactions, and also aesthetic experiences. In a sense, what they do is that they collaborate across disciplines, meaning with developers, with business analysts, with consultants, just to make sure that whatever is discovered, designed, and then implemented, released, and tested is also aligned with the design principles. They also are very keen to understand the problems and needs that users have. Even though this is also partially part of a business analyst's job, this is the designer uses UX research, for example, and other techniques to really get down and deep into the problem and to understand how they can create and help people to do their jobs more efficiently and effectively. Design strategist is a very specific role that has been out there for a very long time. There are many experienced design strategists who are creating value for end users by directing the solutions towards business goals and desired outcomes. This is less hands-on role. This is a role that articulates project vision that is informed by business outcomes. They also orchestrate cross-functional projects, and they are making sure that everybody understands what's the long-term vision, where we are heading, and how all the individual components and all the decisions that are being made, for example, by the digital designer, are in line. And also they educate and empower stakeholders to implement and adopt new processes. A colleague of mine who has been a design strategist on a project with me, their job is to train and coach people to understand what the UX design mindset is, not necessarily to be able to deliver it and to become UX designers, but just to know what it is and what are the components to it, so that they can feel confident when speaking about the UX vision of their own company. And lastly, there's design technologist. This role is very much focused on actually delivering and developing the UX solutions. This could be a developer who has been very confident with the design principles, who is able to build feasible solutions, who is able to deliver to serve the business objectives, who has experience with composing and structuring data, and also is very excited about gaining knowledge to really build up-to-date tools and technology and relevant concepts. This person is the one that eventually develops, for example, the custom lightning design component that the digital designer designed and tested during UX research, and within this whole framework that design strategist has defined. These three roles are complementary, and in reality, they might be even merged, because since we are still working in fairly small teams with a couple of clients, then of course we sometimes do a little bit of everything, but on that a little bit later. Now the human-centered design, what I already mentioned, this is the holy grail of our work. What we are looking into is designing solutions that are following three principles: desirability, viability, and feasibility. Historically, human-centered design has been geared towards finding solutions that are following all of these three criteria. When a solution is desirable, that means that people actually need it. When a solution is feasible, that means that you can actually build it. And when a solution is viable, it means that it fits within your organization business model. I bet that you have heard about at least one project that has failed in one or multiple of these components. Like, for example, when a company has put so much effort and time and money into designing technically brilliant architecture and data model and everything, and all of that is just extremely professional. But in the end of the day, users just fail to understand its value. This means that it wasn't desirable. Or if users really are excited about using this tool, but for some reason at some point you realize that this is not technically financially feasible because it just costs too much. The maintenance is too expensive. The licenses might not be a good match for the use case, and you fail to make it scalable and sustainable. And lastly, sometimes there are money for the solution, there is this desirability, but it just can't be technically achieved because it's something that might be possible in a couple of years from now, but not yet. Mostly this is related to very sophisticated predictions or forecasts or something that would be driven by AI, which of course is a hot topic already today, but not something that would solve all our issues. So let's look at some ways how human-centered design principles have been applied in business that are most relevant today. User experience design, the creation of meaningful and relevant experiences for users. This would be found in the sweet spot between all these three components in the human-centered innovation heart, as we call it, and you can see it on the slide as well. Or in case of service design, the creation of consistent user or customer experiences across multiple interactions. Meaning that if you are, for example, reaching out to a company or to a brand from your phone, email, then you call them, and then you visit their physical store, the experience that you are getting is just consistent on all the levels that you can imagine. And of course, in reality, it's not ideal. It's just sometimes, and some companies, of course, have their user experience on such a high level that we can only learn from them. But for many other situations and companies and use cases, this is just an evolution, and it is a journey, and it's good to acknowledge that we don't have to be perfect from the very beginning, but we just have to start shifting our mind towards this design and making cautious decisions and steps to continuously improve it. My design job in real life, when I think about it, it has a little bit of an everything, to be honest. As I already mentioned, we are working in a small team at this moment, and that allows me to really work on various different elements of the complete UX experience. At the same time, it is extremely exciting because if I only held one of the roles that I just described to you, it might be a little bit boring because now in my reality, I do design strategy, UX research, I work on UX artifacts, I do prototyping and UI design, and I also do training and mentoring. The only thing that I'm not doing is development, but that is something that I miss a little bit, to be honest. Design strategy, as we see it from the UX perspective, is a plan of actions to reach an improved future UX state. The scopes for UX strategy can range to cover a single product, service, or feature, multiple products and services, or entire organizations. It's a very flexible term. However, regardless of the scope, the definition and primary components remain the same. And they are the following. First, vision. Vision or a statement of intent. The vision contextualizes the work the team will eventually do with a high level and user-centered purpose. Let's take an example. We can be a company that sells shoes, and we sell shoes online, and of course there we have an implementation of Service Cloud because we want to be driven by customers and deliver the best possible service. At this moment, we are being very reactive, meaning that we are reacting only to when customers reach out to us with a query on an issue. Our UX vision may be that we want to become more proactive, meaning reaching out to customers when we assume they might have an issue or a question, or when there might be an opportunity to sell them a little bit more, or to help them with something that they didn't even consider they could get. This is what UX vision is. It is essentially a summary of your product or service in its ideal form and value it provides. This vision must be strategically positioned, though, meaning that it has to be research-based and viable in the market. Of course, that we could have a shoe company that predicts whatever we will do in 20 years from now and sells us hiking shoes before we even consider that we could go hiking. But that's, of course, something that is a little bit of an extreme, and just to point out why we really need to base it on the research and viability in the market. Yes, to be honest, this is a little bit away from what we have been doing when it comes to Salesforce implementation. This is pure business consulting or business analysis that might not necessarily be so closely related to technology, but it is part of our job at this moment because we really want to design products that are for our customers, and then only then figure out how technology would fit in. The strategic intent and positioning can emerge from either solving a few key problems for many users or supporting the broader needs of many customers in a narrow market. These are the apologies. These are the two approaches we can consider. Moving to the second component, which is goals and measures. Once we know where we are going, which is defined by the vision, we need to know how we're going to measure our progress. Because everybody wants to know how we are performing, right? So that's why we need to have goals that are alongside with metrics and key performance indicators, just directing us in terms of how we are connecting US improvements with the actual business goals. And then there is a plan. Plan is what is needed to achieve each and single individual goal, and it breaks it down into multiple objectives. So if we want to have a reactive, a proactive service that is just reaching out to our customers when we assume they would need us, we need to break it down into individual components, individual use cases that will help us achieve that. UX artifacts, my favorite part. As a part of the design process, we create different types of deliverables. We have covered in the UX strategy what's the framework, and now the UX artifacts are actually the craft deliverables that are outcome of the whole design process. We can speak about journey maps, service blueprints, ecosystem maps, or empathy maps, or mental models, or storyboards. There are so many of them, and each of them is good for a different use case. Let me pick three that I believe are most relevant and are very applicable to diverse use cases. Journey map is the first one. It is a visualization of each step of a persona's experience with a product or service over a period of time. This map helps you to tell a story of how a user is interacting with your service or product across all the touch points. It talks to users to piece together their journey, and sometimes we find that in the actual journey, there are some gaps, or that something that we thought it was there, it's actually not there. And we need to use this journey map in order to identify where we can optimize the process, or where are the pain points, or where is an opportunity to implement new and potential solutions. The second one that I would like to explain to you in a little bit of a detail is empathy map. An empathy map is a visualization of how a user thinks, feels, acts, and speaks. This type of map helps you consider user psychology and identify the motivations behind your products and services personas. Create an empathy map for each persona is the recommendation that we are following as well. And thus square with 4 equal quadrants, as you can see on the picture. Personas, in fact, is also one of the UX artifacts, even though we don't have them listed here. It is an essential tool for us to understand who are our customers, because of course, as we know, for example, from marketing, we also don't have just one audience. We have multiple different audiences that need different treatment, different campaigns, different added values. All of that is different, and the same applies to UX. We need to have UX personas that are being addressed differently. Last one is the storyboard. Storyboard is like growing a fairy tale. It is a sequence of illustrations that help designers and stakeholders to visualize how users interact with your product and service at each stage of a journey. Usually it is a very good addition to the journey map, because there, in a bit more visually powerful form, you can see how it actually works. It looks like a little comic that emphasizes how users interact and what kind of data, for example, you collect from them at each stage. It doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be a masterpiece that you're gonna sell then. But the point of a storyboard is just to make it more relatable and easily to communicate, for example, towards stakeholders, because not everybody might be necessarily super comfortable when going through a journey map or a service blueprint, for example. User research is the third area that I'm involved in. And what it actually means is that we are gaining insights about the problem that we are dealing with. In simplicity, we can differentiate between 4 different types of user research that are, again, complementary, as you can see on the chart in the right bottom. We have behavioral methods that are helping us to understand what people do. We have attitudinal methods that are helping us understand what people are actually saying. And then we can also consider qualitative and quantitative approaches. Each of them are giving us a different level of detail and are helping us find the answers to either what people say or what people do. With the qualitative ones, we are more able to understand why people do something or how they do it. We are trying to understand their opinions, use cases, or attitudes. While with quantitative research, we are more able to understand how many. We can objectively validate certain assumptions and then generalize it to a wider audience. We just need a big enough sample to understand what, for example, the whole society or everybody who falls under one persona or audience does. Here we can see a landscape of user research methods on this very same chart. When we go, for example, from the qualitative ones and attitudinal, the merger between those, we can see that the recommended approach for research is maybe setting up focus groups, which means a group of a small number of people that we speak with together, or interviews, one-to-ones, right? With individual interviews, they are very good for getting detailed information from a user and how they spend time getting to know whatever, or how they use a product, or how they use a service. With focus groups, they are very good for observing participants, how they respond to your questions, how they interact with one another. You can note down certain similarities with people. You can also get something from the group atmosphere and also notice some differences that will help you work out how they use or don't use your product or service or the piece of technology. Now moving a little bit towards the quantitative approach when still asking for the attitudes is card sorting and desirability studies are somehow in the middle. And then when we go towards the most quantitative, obviously, is email surveys. We have been very experienced, of course, as a Salesforce community, for example, running surveys for our customers to understand what's their NPS or anything. They are just generally good for casting a wide net to collect many responses. Going now on the top of the chart, we are looking into more behavioral types of research, where we can see, for example, ethnographic field studies, when we really spend some time physically together with someone and try to understand how they are working with certain things, or eye tracking, pretty expensive, fun, but at the same time can give us a very clear understanding how, for example, a user is moving across a layout that we have been testing. There is also A/B testing. For example, for those of you who might not necessarily be familiar with that, A/B testing is that when we present a user with one user group with one option, another user group with the second option, and then we compare the performance or whatever we need to get to. Prototyping and UX design. This is just something that I always come back to mentally when we make a certain decision, and then when we realize it just wasn't the right thing to do. That's why I really like this quote, measure twice, cut once, because this is also very much relevant for technology. Even though in technology many things are repairable, still when we avoid these things happening, it is definitely a good investment. And that's why we've got prototyping. Prototyping, we distinguish between two different types, low fidelity and high fidelity prototyping. With low fidelity prototyping, we are focusing on the function. We are building layouts or wireframes or sketches that are just meant to communicate the structure of either an app or a page or a component, whatever we are doing. The idea is just to convey the overall direction of what the user interface will look like. However, not necessarily what will be the final visual element. Also, what the low fidelity prototyping is good for is because we can iterate very fast with that. We can even do it live with our stakeholders. We just create a nice little sketch, and then as they are providing us with feedback, we can very easily reshuffle things and come to an agreement very fast. While high fidelity prototyping usually comes much later in the process. Low fidelity prototyping is essential during discovery phase. High fidelity prototyping is usually part of user story creation when we have defined everything that we need to have developed, and we want to provide additional input for the developers so that they can create maybe or hopefully a pixel perfect solution. High fidelity prototyping focuses also on the visual side of things. These are mockups or even interactive elements or apps that give us more indication of what's going to be the final output. For many stakeholders or people, even when we are doing research, it is better to have a high fidelity prototyping because not everybody is tech savvy. For some people, sketches or wireframes might not be something that they would understand, so that's why high fidelity, of course, is a good choice as well. They also focuses on detail and advanced design elements, colors, fonts, and all of that. When we have a high fidelity prototype, that's definitely something we can do. But at the same time, it's fair to say it's much more difficult to iterate on it. It usually takes more time, and taking back to the drawing board a high fidelity prototype is definitely more complicated than the low fidelity one. Training and mentoring. That's how I call sharing is caring, because we have done a lot of that as well. Our clients are committed to become more UX forward, more aware of design principles that Salesforce that Salesforce has, and also try to think about how they can align their design principles with what Salesforce Lightning Design System, for example, states. And in order to do that, they don't necessarily have to hire 3 new UX designers and to go big immediately. They start with getting themselves training and upskilling their admins and consultants as business analysts, because this is where it actually starts, with awareness and changing the mindset. What we have done, just to give you an example of what has been a pretty efficient and successful and impactful approach, is that we have done a combination of group trainings and individual mentoring. These group training sessions were in total, we had 8 of them. They were 45-minute long, and we covered very relevant topics that our target group, meaning business analysts, UX designers, developers, quality assurance, deployers, and architects, have identified themselves that they want to develop even more. They were very much designed, content-wise and format-wise, to really target the specific needs, to make it interactive and engaging, to make it fun, because nobody wants to spend their time on a 3-hour boarding call and to actually realize that UX is terrible. Not at all. That's why we really spend some time on making it fun, making it very much based on different case studies and examples, so that we could interact with one another and share our experiences. And the individual mentoring has been great as well, because during regular weekly sessions, we have been going through individual product backlog items or user stories or anything that has been on the mind of the people at the time, and we were looking into very specific pieces of work that they could implement the design principles into immediately. To summarize, what I would like to say is that, and this is what I strongly believe as well, and Steve Jobs did believe that as well, is that design is not just what it looks like and how it feels. Design is how it works. And what's really interesting is that Steve Jobs was also inspired by the 2 American psychologists that came up with this idea of putting knobs on the 2 controls. He also heard the story, and getting inspired by such an innovative solution, he actually came up with the idea of having a mouse that you could use to control your computer. Because before that, the only way you could control the computer was just through a keyboard and through the programming language. And with this, again, this very nice and fairly easy solution, which was very innovative at the time, he has completely redesigned the whole way we are experiencing computers and working with computers up until today. If you want to consider becoming a UX designer, and if you feel like this could be a way for you to go, or if there is someone on your team or around you that could be a good fit for that, get certified. There is a Salesforce UX Designer certification that was released last year, and it is very much focused for aspiring or experienced designers who want to build and design human-centered experiences on Salesforce platform. Ideally, candidates should have a baseline knowledge of how to solve problems using human-centered design, what are the UX concepts, how to deliver certain design principles using Salesforce platforms. This certification doesn't have any prerequisite, so you don't have to be an admin, you don't have to be a consultant, you just can go, and even though you have never worked with Salesforce, you can pass it. What's very important to know, though, is that declarative design, which is effectively knowledge of Salesforce platform, is the part that has highest weight. So, of course, even though you might not necessarily have that much experience as an admin, there is a certain part where you need to apply that knowledge in order to successfully pass. However, I can definitely say I passed it last year and I was very, very excited about it because many things that I was able to learn on a very comprehensive trailhead that you can access by clicking on this link or scanning the QR code, it is very interesting only to learn about, because there is also a topic of accessibility, how to design solutions that can be processed very well with screen readers. Because yes, even though you might not be aware of that, some of your users might have some difficulties, and not necessarily that they would be completely blind, but they might have some temporary disabilities that we should be considerate of as well. And here you can learn how to be considerate about that. There are many other resources that you can access if you want to get ready for the certification, or if you are just generally interested in the topic. There is a design curriculum available on Trailhead. There are these designer certifications with a new one for design strategist coming up very soon. There is a very active design community on Trailblazer website. There is Trailhead Academy, Trailhead Life and Design blog that you can definitely check out. There are very interesting articles being published on a regular basis. There is a design and career website, again on Trailhead, and events. In the upcoming few months, there are many other Salesforce conferences that you can attend either virtually or physically, where the designer role will be featured as well. To conclude, I would like just to say a few words on what are the 3 steps to become a Salesforce UX designer. First, as I said, upskill yourself. And even though I'm saying Salesforce UX designer, it doesn't mean that you have to take the certification. Just upskill yourself to be aware of the design principles and to be able to deliver the solutions, to be better developer, to be better consultant or better business analyst, so that maybe you can then share with the others and help us build the design community this way. Secondly, look around and seize the opportunity. Since this has been such a new topic still, nobody, or for some people it happens, but it usually doesn't work the way that someone will approach you and tell you, well, now let's make the design together. No, it is just more of a proactive approach, saying, well, this is an opportunity to do a good UX research. Let's give it a try. Let's just maybe try to redesign this custom lightning component to make it a little bit more usable or more beautiful. And then deliver and share. Share with anybody who you feel like could benefit from it, because we need that. Going back to our favorite 2 American psychologists, actually one of them has continued his research even beyond and after the Second World War. And what he was saying is that research actually is not everything. And that's good to be aware of that, because sometimes we need to throw experience and gut feeling to the mix. And he demonstrated it on a very interesting example that he has himself tested and researched on with thousands of people in the 60s. As you can see on the picture in the right-hand side, there are actually proposed keyboards for a new cell phone that has been back then designed. And there were so many different options that the respondents should choose from, so that they could actually make use of the right one. Most of the respondents actually chose ICE1C, which is actually the one right here in the top right corner, which is very similar looking as the phones that looked like before. However, this psychologist was so smart that he said that instead of taking into account what the audience said, he would also take into consideration the fact that the option 4A, which is on the 4th row, is the fastest to work with and has the lowest number of errors. And since then, This is how keyboards on our phones look like, or at least before we had smartphones. And this has been another innovative solution that this person has brought to the world. This has been almost everything from my side. I would like just to give you a little bit of a time to do our quiz. You can answer three very simple questions that are based on what I was saying during the whole presentation and win our wonderful PwC swag. We've got a PwC hoodie, we've got a wireless mouse and seg bag, and a pen drive or seg bag. So definitely check this out. Scan this QR code and answer these questions correctly, and you will see if you will be lucky enough to get some of these really cool things.
Hello, hello. Can I join you right now? I would just like to add that you will find the link to the quiz in the comment section also. Just as you showed the QR code, we also gave our viewers the link to the quiz. Okay, so are you ready for a Q&A session, maybe?
Yes, of course.
Yes, because we have some questions in the comments, guys. We still have some time, so if anything was particularly interesting to you, please let us know and submit your question. You still have some time. And now let me show you the first one. I believe it was this one. Which certificates besides UX designer should be considered useful?
It depends where this person wants to develop. For me, what has been probably most useful was an admin and app builder certification. Because even though I said that these are not at all prerequisites in order to take the user certification, for me it is extremely useful because apart from all the soft skills that I can apply, this one, understanding how Salesforce works, allows me to be even more considerate of what are the technical implications and to design something that I know will be feasible to develop. Well, is user designer certification hard to pass? I guess it's as hard as many other certifications. For some people, it is very easy because they have been experienced admins and they have experienced being developers and they know something about UX. While for some people, it may be a bit challenging because they have to learn all and many new things. What I can highly recommend, though, in order to make it as easy for yourself as possible, is to check out the certification preparation trail mix that is on Trailhead. It is about 50 hours if you want to go through all of that, but all those modules that are there are extremely useful, and you will find most of the answers to the questions actually there.
And now this question. Can anyone become a Salesforce UX designer? What do you think? Is it for everyone?
I think it is as if we were asking whether everybody can become a mountaineer or if everybody can become a politician. I don't think so. It is about personal preference and also I would say, the talent and the passion that you've got. For me, a very essential part of UX designer role or component is first the technical skill that most people can definitely learn, and that's why I have been also speaking about the admin and app builder part. Then there's this research and strategy. Again, these are soft skills that can definitely be learned for someone who is excited and who has that kind of strategic long-term thinking. But then there is a component also of aesthetics and visual design that not everybody may necessarily have, which is totally fine. But I'm saying that this is also something that makes me a good UX designer when I know that these two colors just don't match. And for some people, this may be a little bit difficult. But I believe that the best approach is just to give it a try and to see.
Exactly. See if you like it. Okay, and this is the longer one. How can we change the perception of UX that is by many still seen as a nice to have, which is hardly ever prioritized?
Well, that is a very difficult question because this is actually something that we have been fighting and struggling with on many projects. And as I was saying during my presentation, sometimes it's just fair to acknowledge that the design in its full extent just doesn't have a place on a very small project. But what I believe is an effective way to go forward is just to start with small things, small changes that can do not necessarily cost us money or much time or something, and to demonstrate based on this how efficient they can be and how well it impacts the user interface, for example, or user adoption. And then from that, establish the importance and the value within the stakeholders and take it from there.
And the next question, what are the biggest obstacles a UX designer faces?
I believe that for me, this is very much related to what I was saying about not being recognized as much as we can. And that's why we need to work collectively to establish it even more. There were many years ago, many other Salesforce roles were just not recognized. I remember when I started as a business analyst and people were asking me, well, why don't you just start building it? And I was like, no, I can't start building it when I don't understand what I should build. And that's why I should do business analysis first. And I believe that the same applies to user experience design role. We just have to really make people understand that this is an important component of our job. And over time, I'm very confident that it becomes just a very standard part of any project team. And nobody will even ask why this person is also with here. So.
Great. Thank you so much for this answer. And I believe these are all the questions we have right now. And this is all the time that we have for the questions. But guys, I have a good message to you. If nothing changed, Katka, I think you are staying here with us for a bit longer. Maybe not necessarily here, but you are joining the virtual stand, right? You are joining your company for a Q&A. So if anyone wants to meet Katka and maybe ask some questions, I think it's you're starting in about 4 minutes and you're staying for half an hour, right?
For 15 minutes, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, for 15 minutes.
Okay. Yes, I will be there. Everybody's welcome.
Okay, so let me just remind that you should find Katka at platforma.sforcesummit.pl/PWC. Please be sure to find our partners, now sponsors out there. Thank you so much for joining us once again at S4 Summit 2022, and we hope to see you again during the next edition of our summit. Thank you so much once again.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.